I am happy to reconnect with all of you today. My name is Rajal Mazroui. I'm the Executive Vice President for DIFC FinTech Hive. And today we have a very special guest and a very interesting topic to talk about. We talk about the global COVID-19 FinTech Market Rapid Assessment Study that's been prepared by the University of Cambridge and the World Bank Group in partnership with the World Economic Forum. The survey aims to analyze data related to the impact of COVID-19 on the FinTech industry and is open to all FinTech companies. If you're interested in contributing, we'll be emailing the link to take the survey following the webinar. Our guest speaker is Alexander Reviakin. He will be presenting to you today, and he is the Mena Regional Survey Lead at the Cambridge Center for Alternative Finance. We are also joined by Tanya Ziegler, who is the lead of global benchmarking at the Cambridge Center for Alternative Finance, who will be available along with Alexander to answer any questions. In today's session, Alexander will be discussing the interim findings of the global COVID-19 rapid assessment survey, the key issues that FinTechs have faced during the pandemic, and ways they have responded to the crisis. He will also highlight the importance of contributions from all regions and verticals. We will open the floor to Q&A in the end. You should all see an option that says questions. Please click on it and type any question you may have for the speakers through the presentation or in the end. Once Alexander is done with his presentation, we will be taking these questions one by one. Thank you again for joining us for Webinar Wednesdays of the DIFC FinTech Hive, and I would hand over to Alexander to take us through the presentation.
Thank you, Raja, for a lovely introduction, and good afternoon, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be with you all today and for us to be partners with FinTech Hive as part of our COVID-19 Rapid Assessment Survey. The Mena region is often overlooked despite having a thriving FinTech ecosystem, and so we do look to our partnership as a vital collaboration to help ensure strong representation from the region in this piece of global research that we're conducting with the World Bank and the World Economic Forum. So at the Cambridge Center for Alternative Finance, CCAF, we have been leading the discourse on alternative finance through our team of over 35 researchers and associates for the last 5 years. And that's thanks in part to our strong relationships with key stakeholders globally, from industry players to regulators, international organizations to local actors. And within the Arab world, we regularly participate in the AMF's FinTech Working Group and are expanding our work to create a regional hub in, dare I say it, Abu Dhabi, to really grow our network in the region. So our work is founded on the mission to create and transfer knowledge about the financial sector, identifying gaps and finding and supporting evidence-based decision-making. So for the last 5 years, we've conducted over 40 reports covering digital lending, digital capital raising, crypto assets, and other sorts of regulatory technology. The results of which have impacted policy decisions and helped inform the creation of enabling environments worldwide. We're able to have the impact we do because of the gap that we bridge between industry players and the regulators. For example, we also provide capacity building and education to regulators, including our flagship Cambridge FinTech and Regulatory Innovation Program, which so far has trained over 400 regulators in over 100 countries. So as you can tell, we truly believe that FinTech has the potential to transform lives, to challenge orthodoxies, and offer consumers the innovative ways they need to manage and maximize their finances. And it's proven itself to do so. FinTech came out of a crisis. It emerged after the 2008 financial crisis, as I see it, and it was FinTech which proved itself to be adaptable to consumer needs, adaptable to regulations, and adaptable to the extent that it has had a huge impact on financial inclusion, increasing it enormously. So when the most recent crisis hit, that little thing called COVID that none of us have any idea about, it was imperative for us at CCAF to be able to measure how FinTech has been affected and what the market's needs are to aid the long-term recovery, because we see FinTech as being crucial to that recovery. And so we embarked on this rapid assessment survey with the World Bank and the World Economic Forum to act as a baseline and capture and analyze and understand 4 key components. First of all, the key performance indicators. We're gathering directional data from firms to benchmark the market performance of FinTech firms in areas such as transaction volumes, customer acquisition rates, loan default rates, premium lapses, and the participation of retail and institutional investors in the provision of funding across various verticals. Secondly, we want to understand what the specific responses that FinTech firms have taken are, and how they have adapted to the uncertainties of Covid-19. This has sometimes included specific pandemic provisioning, if we like. For example, I can think of Ahmini in Tunisia and Siwa in Morocco, who have both included non-financial services in their offerings, such as education on health and the pandemic itself. Thirdly, we want to understand the regulatory needs of these FinTechs. It's vital to understand, of course, how they've adapted, but it's also important to put FinTechs at the center of global discussion and make sure there's an understanding of what FinTechs need to scale, scope, and help the recovery. Last but by no means least, we remember that these FinTechs are firms themselves whose daily operations have been impacted, from human resources to cybersecurity. And so one of the hypotheses that we have is that actually FinTech firms are going to be uniquely able to mitigate these risks due to their intrinsic digital nature. So that's one of the things, for example, that we want to analyze. Now, to achieve these goals, of course, we need a sizable response from the FinTech community globally. We can only be as reflective as the data we're able to receive. And so we're aiming to capture the responses of 2,500 FinTechs in this piece of market research, which will be utilized by key stakeholders. Now, when we think of FinTech, we might instinctively think of digital lending and payments. In the region, I think of Hive and PaySky. But FinTech extends further than that, as we all know. And we spent several months formalizing our taxonomy to ensure we captured the breadth and depth of the FinTech ecosystem. We've created a lexicon, if you like, that is sufficiently globally comparable and recognizable, but gives enough nuance to understand the context that FinTechs are operating in on a jurisdictional level. So here you have our taxonomy that we spent some time developing. As you can see, we have 15 or so overarching verticals with 108 subcategories, as we knew it would be insufficient to omit certain verticals in the kind of research that we're undertaking. You can see we address firms operating in market provisioning. We've got rotative savings accounts, Jama'iyya, Tontine. We have digital identity and, of course, the payments and digital bank sphere as well. And this is true for the region as well. While we acknowledge that payments and remittances might capture a larger market in the Mena region, I can think of an EKYC solution like Amani, what kind of challenges they might be facing. Payment solution like PaySky, a micro savings platform like Spare. And the logic to capture all these different verticals exists within our survey. So when a firm responds to our short 15-minute survey, they will be asked to categorize themselves and then given specific questions to see what challenges they are facing. And so anyway, I've mentioned digital capital raising, mentioned digital lending, payments, but I'd be very interested to ask you all what kind of fintechs you have seen within the region. So I've got this, I don't know if you guys have used Mentimeter before, but it's this brilliant interactive tool. So if I could ask you to go to menti.com and put in the code, I wonder whether, I think so, it's been posted in the chat. Yes, thank you, Tanya. And then you should be presented with a text box which you can enter the kind of categories you've seen operating in Mina. So I'd ask you all to do that now and let us know if you have any issues with that. Payments, there we go. Okay, we've got a big preference for the payment side of things here. Just give it a couple more moments. So the larger the word, the more people have said it. So you see lots of people have said payments and lending, money management. Well, remittances, here we go, keep coming in. InsurTech, that's nice to see. This makes a lot of sense, you know, if we think about the kind of fintechs which are operating in the region. As I was saying before, payments and remittances are the biggest category, but you know, there are lots of other innovative solutions that have come from the region, such as crypto trading, the InsurTech. I mean, I've mentioned the KYC solutions already. But this is exactly the kind of discussion that we had among the team to come up with the taxonomy that I just showed you, a robust taxonomy that includes things like robo-advisory as well. So I'm going to move on from this word cloud now. Thank you for all participating. But, and I'd like to share with you some of the initial insights that we have. We're still receiving responses in time for our deadline. So far we have over 1,000, which we're very happy with, but you know, we're still pushing. And I'm going to provide you with some initial insights which we have learned from the first weeks of our survey, from June the 15th to July the 5th. Now 60% of the firms who have replied so far, or within that time frame, are engaged in either digital payments or digital lending. And a preliminary review of their responses provides us with an early indication of the market trends and how fintechs have responded to the pandemic. These observations may of course change as we receive more and more fintechs responses and they share their experience with us. But as the two main verticals, I'll start with digital lending and digital payments to give you a snapshot of what we're seeing so far. So here we have some directional impressions of how digital lending firms have adapted. As I mentioned, I think before in the survey, we're not asking for anyone to give their bottom lines. It's very much asking for firms to give a directional impression of how they have adapted. So here you can see that digital lenders have reported reduced transaction volumes by value, around 12%, and by number, 13%, reflecting a diminishing number of new and repeat borrowers. But what I find interesting is to look at the investment side of things. So there's a reported decrease in institutional capital that's being offered compared with retail capital. So this suggests that retail capital might be stickier, something that we want to analyze in our sort of in the sort of analysis stage of our research. And as we receive more responses, yes, we will be testing these findings at a regional level to see if jurisdictions with, say, higher levels of institutionalization have seen tighter supply impact in the ability to originate or service loans. Continuing the focus on digital lending firms, let's take a look at how they have adapted their policies and service agreements. So here you can see the blue bars are the changes that have been implemented. And as you can see, the majority of respondents reported changes to their existing products or services to meet the changing needs. 54% have noted the introduction of payment easements, 46 payment holidays, and 50% have changed the qualification onboarding criteria that they have. Now, this brings us very neatly to the regulatory needs aspect of the survey, because 75% of the respondents in the digital lending vertical have said that they urgently need regulatory support for remote onboarding, and 65 require support for eKYC. Moving to payments, we can see that everything is up, except for a few non-repayment instances. Digital payment respondents have seen net increases in activity, with transaction volumes up by 27.6% on value, 30 or so percent by number compared to the same period last year. This coincides with an increase in existing customer retention, as well as an increase in new customers. Delayed payments, as I said, have, however, increased slightly, well, by 26%. Regarding the policy and price changes to existing products and services, 47% of the respondents have indicated a fee or commission reduction, 33% a waiver, and there have not been many instances of launching new products and services to deal with changing needs. But there has been the indication for the need for urgent and significant regulatory support to continue servicing clients, especially as customer acquisition increases. So 80% have indicated an urgent need for simplified customer due diligence, and remote onboarding and KYC is there again, and less burdensome regulatory and supervisory requirements too. Of course, these observations are just a snapshot of the geographical and vertical responses that we've received, but there's someone missing to create the empirical data that informs decisions for firms, stakeholders, regulators, policymakers. We need as many respondents as possible, and to complete the survey, which is just 14 questions, and as I said, takes no more than 16 minutes, 15, 16 minutes. And this is especially important when it comes to the Mena region. The Mena region has had a lot of attention for good reason as a hub for FinTech, especially in the UAE. And in fact, we have seen that, well, from my reading, I've seen that, you know, the regulators have been quick to act in the region in response to COVID-19. The UAE Pass has been a huge help to remote onboarding. The Egyptian Central Bank of Egypt has enabled remote onboarding. To just give a couple of examples, we know there are significant findings and potential for the region. But in order for that to come to light and to be used by key stakeholders to encourage greater investment, more progressive regulation, and healthy competition, these stories have to be heard. So I really encourage everyone everyone from the region, FinTech firms in the region, to respond to our survey, and for those of you with contacts with more FinTechs, to encourage them to participate. All data submitted by the FinTechs, and the link has been posted in the chat now. All data submitted by FinTechs will be anonymized and aggregated. if we want to acknowledge the firms that do take part, so those who would like to be, will be prominently acknowledged in the final report to be published in September, at the end of September, bringing them to global attention among key stakeholders. We're also hosting another meetup on the 5th of August, which we will circulate in an email alongside the survey link itself. That's one that we'll be organizing internally to give more of a fine-tune, it will be fine-tuned at a regional level. And I hope that by then we will have an even more representative input from the region. I mean, I leave you with the thought that this survey is the largest piece of market research you don't have to pay for. So thank you very much. And I'll hand back over to Raja. Unless actually none of you can hear me now, and I've been speaking to myself for the last 15 minutes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Thank you, Alexander. This was excellent. We will just move to the questions right now. If anybody has a question, please submit your questions in the Q&A box. We're waiting for the questions to come through.
Perhaps I covered everything so well that nobody has any questions.
You've done a great job. That's a great research.
Well, and we hope, you know, that more responses from your community will really help make sure we can spotlight the region and its sort of its wealth of FinTech.
Absolutely, Alexander, and we will share the questionnaire with the community, and I'm sure you will have a deeper look into our region that would maybe support or contradict some of the findings that you have.
Yeah.
If I could just add really quickly just one quick comment. Hi, my name is Tanya. We are actually going to be running a closed meetup with our key association partners such as FinTech Hive, and one of the things that we really want to make sure that we do is by at least August sort of 7th, we have sufficient data, especially from this region, that we can then start to really begin honing in on specific activities that are happening at a vertical level, specific activities that are happening at a country level, because obviously the findings that Alex just presented, those are very much globally representative from the collection period between June 15th and July 5th. So, at that point of our collection, we did not have sufficient data to really get granular. We're now approaching, a place where we can start getting granular, and we want to make sure that we can do that in Mena as well. So please, if you have recommendations on what you would also like to see out of this research and to help us test some of our hypotheses, yes, definitely participate in the study, but also feel free to reach out to Alex, to Raja, to myself, and let us know the concerns and the pain points that you're having so that we can make sure that when we're doing our analysis and then providing that back to our key partners, that you guys are getting the information that you actually need as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Tanya. We have one question from Aisha. Aisha is asking, what areas within FinTech do you think has the most potential within Mina over the next decade? I will hand over to Alex and maybe get Tanya's view as well.
That's it. Yeah, it's a very good question. It'd be very interesting to see which of the verticals does grow the most. But I certainly, I mean, I read a recent report about fintech in the Arab world, in the Mena region, which identified a revenue potential of $7 billion for fintech in the region. Now that's huge, and that actually relatively won't require so much, won't require so much investment to get to that. I think considering the market share that payments and remittances hold in the region, that's certainly a vertical that I see is going to continue to grow over the next decade. I also think that linked to the way that fintechs have had to respond to COVID, the fact that regulators have really taken such things as digital identity and eKYC, remote onboarding, so seriously, it's sort of given a real push forward for that as well. So I do think that digital identity solutions which can safeguard, you know, consumer privacy, but also and be interoperable between different institutions will have a potential to really grow in the region as well. Yeah.
And I think I might only just add that, you know, we also see a lot of the, you know, the B2B side as well. And so in many instances, you know, we're observing fintechs that, you know, that certainly are, you know, facing consumers, facing households, facing SMEs, but that there's also a lot of room for growth in that market provisioning enterprise technology space as well, where fintech firms are actually providing different services to other businesses or to other financial institutions as well. So we are seeing a growth in the B2B side as well.
Thank you, Tanya. We have another question. Do you see openness for collaboration with international partner/markets to grow fintech in the region, or something MENA stakeholders will want to do only from within?
I think that local innovation or regional innovation is incredibly important. I think that, you know, nobody understands what the consumer wants more than the consumer themselves, and so to have solutions which are coming from the region themselves rather than having international. I think this is what the question's getting at. Correct me if I'm wrong, Darius, in the chat or however you're able to. But I think I do think that MENA stakeholders will want to, build from within, and we should encourage local solutions, regional solutions. However, you know, one of the sticking points for the growth of fintech, I would say, is the lack of funds which can maybe take fintech firms to that Series B. You know, when they're really operating at scale, I think that is maybe somewhere that there needs to be more investor education beyond the region, since there aren't so many funds that are investing on that scale in the region. Yeah, I think.
Maybe I can add to that, Alex, because through the FinTech Hive, what we started to see right now, there's a lot of scale-ups that are coming to scale through the region from the FinTech Hive. So we work with strategic and institutional partners who are interested in investing in these technologies and scaling them to beyond the region where we operate. So these collaborations are absolutely available. The intentions and the motivation to scale these solutions within the region are very attractive for most of the key players within the fintech industry, because we all see the potential and we really can't shy away from that opportunity. Another question from Sherbel says, Alexander, do you think that we will see more digital banking projects through MENA region post-COVID?
Well, I think that's partly, as Tanya was saying, to the B2B side of things. I think that software solution, I think it'll be interesting on the digital banking point of view to see whether digital banking grows because there'll be more and more digital first banks being set up, or whether fintechs will be working with existing banks to digitalize the processes.
Can I just add one comment really quick with respect to the collaboration question, just because there's just one other element that I think is worth, mentioning. And the first is that collaboration can take many forms. And one of the things that we do see is that a lot of institutional or more traditional financial services providers are seeing the utility in not viewing financial technology as competition, but as potential collaborators. And this is something that we are noting, not just globally, but certainly, certainly in this region as well. So I think that when we think about collaboration, we have to be quite nuanced in how we are referring to this. Are we looking at this with respect to just, a facility of finance, or are we looking at the other elements of partnership that come alongside that conversation? One of the things that's always struck me, as some of you may know, but I'm not sure if you do, we've been studying the Mena region for the last few years. One of the other projects that we run at the center is a time series based data analysis benchmarking report that looks very specifically at the digital lending and capital raising space. And we've been looking at this region now for coming on to 5 years. And one of the things that has really left an impression upon me is that in the last, in particular, 3 years, you do see a number of international players that are very focused on looking at how to enter the Mena region, but also support locally based fintechs here. So this is where an emphasis on actually really understanding the space is so critical, because actually, for many outside of the region, it's something of an enigma. Where there is sort of this knowledge that the ecosystem is quite large. There's knowledge that the ecosystem is evolving quickly, but without having a lot of quite specific understanding of what that ecosystem looks like, where the different model emphases may or may not be. So I do think that as we're having discussions about financial technology, in Mena in particular, it's very important to highlight the strengths that are coming from within, to highlight to the international community that actually this is a region that is worth them looking at and worth them coming and participating in. Obviously, one of the hallmarks of financial technology is the fact that it's all happening in a digital arena. So borders effectively become somewhat blurred. We see tremendous amounts of cross-border activity, not just with respect to, inflows and outflows of funds, but also different types of partnerships, different types of collaborations. And that's something that we would hope to see increase, actually, in particular in the next 18 months for this region. To that effect, I think it might be worth just mentioning a collaboration that the center is doing. As Alex kind of alluded to in the start of the conversation, we have been building these collaboration network hubs throughout the world. Obviously, our university is based in the United Kingdom, but we have a hub in Kenya. We're going to be opening a hub in Singapore, and we will be opening a hub actually in Abu Dhabi with the ADGMA, so the Abu Dhabi Global Market Academy. So from the global perspective, this is a really critical region, one that that we feel is very much worth investing research time into, and one that we can see from within the region is actually very keen on establishing a financial technology hub that actually not only can reach the rest of MENA, but actually can be a springboard more globally. So, when we talk about collaborations, I think it's wise to not only think about it with respect to, where funding can come from or where funding can flow out of, but also all of those other interconnective tissues. And that actually kind of lends itself quite well to the question that you have around digital banking. With the open banking and open APIs and different now enterprise technology components that are coming into play, we do see an emphasis from a number of firms, and we've seen this more, frankly speaking, in a qualitative nature. So we do not have sufficient data to be able to provide hard stats against this yet, but we definitely are seeing an emphasis in that digital banking arena, in particular when it comes to the banking as a service side, savings as a service, and certainly, where you are seeing, actually that technological innovation, which is really something that I think we can highlight from this region, and something that I don't think, is necessarily highlighted often enough, actually, that there is tremendous innovation coming from this region. I mean, I'm speaking to the choir, I'm speaking to the converted, certainly, that you all know this, that it would be great if we had data, hard data, that we could then reflect the observations that we are seeing anecdotally.
Thank you, Tanya. To confirm your findings as well, and the DIFC FinTech Hive has built a global network with FinTech accelerators across the world. I think we're connected with more than 20 global hubs to really streamline and connect the innovations between the startups, the technology providers, and the financial institutions. And I also sit on the board of one of the UAE banks, and with this bank, we're actually looking at the digital transformation journey, and banking as a service is one of the options we're looking at. The other one is digital banking platform. So it's definitely a priority, whether it's at a government level, at financial institutions level, and system integrators as well, because this is a key area for them to develop and innovate, to connect all of these engines together to create something that would fit and meet the requirements of the consumer behavior that have suddenly accelerated over COVID. We used to go and pitch the FinTech and technology to institutions. Now they're coming to us and asking, how can we do this fast? Because consumers' behavior has shifted, and there's no one interested going to the bank's branch anymore, since they've realized they can get away with it.
Yeah, and that's so critical. I mean, I think the point I think the last point that you made is almost the hypotheses that we need to test, right? I mean, COVID-19 has not only changed the way that the financial technology industry is working, but certainly the way that those clients, customers, and consumers are. And frankly, what we are seeing is that financial technology firms are in a position to be best prepared to service those clients, service those individuals. And I completely agree with you. It's an observation that we're seeing as well, where those bigger traditional financial platforms are coming to the fintechs and are seeking solutions. So I think everything you've just said is like a perfect reflection of what our data is starting to see as well.
Thank you so much, Tanya, and thank you, Alex, for joining us today. And it's great insights, and we will share the link of the survey with our community. Hopefully get more insights from the region. And we look forward to hosting you here in Dubai in the DIFC FinTech Hive when you make your visit over. I would like to thank our audience for joining us today, and look for the next Webinar Wednesday. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Take care. Bye-bye.